Well, yesterday we looked at the first three of what I call the internal corruptors. Those sinful behaviors or attitudes on the inside that really express themselves in other more egregious ways, like violence or all sorts of immorality. I find that a lot of times people will drift into sexual immorality because whether it's actually adultery, fornication, or just pornography and things of that nature, which are more ubiquitous, that they're going there as a way of self-medicating themselves because of the anger, the rage, the frustration, and so forth that's living inside of them. But we're going to hit number 4 today, where it's, again, something that you and I tend to engage in a lot of times, and it really reveals a maliciousness inside of us, and it's a thing called slander. It's interesting because the word actually here in the original is blasphemia, where we get our word blaspheme, and it means to slander or to detract. It's speech that's designed to be injurious to another person, to really kind of attack them, so that people won't think well of them. And unfortunately, I think this is something that we all engage to one degree or another. And many times we try to cover it up. We may say, well, I'm just sharing my heart and so forth. But what we're really doing is basically diminishing the value of another person in the manner in which we're talking about them. In fact, in Proverbs 10:18, it was Solomon said, the one who conceals hatred has lying lips, and whoever utters slanders is a fool. That it's really kind of a lie many times. Slander itself becomes a lie because it may be telling the truth about somebody, but it's telling the truth in a way that ensures a negative response from other people. And that's such a hard thing to do, because if we've been injured or wounded or hurt or disappointed or betrayed by another person, we want some way of expressing that pain, because it is really, really painful. And so what we try to find is a sympathetic ear. And if we're sharing with somebody who is not sympathetic, then what we do is we start basically telling them why they should be sympathetic, and we can alter in a very negative way their view of this other person. It's a difficult thing, because it's not like you can never share negative things about other people. I think that's how some people interpret it. That's just not possible. There are some negative behaviors that people regularly display that other people need to be aware of and need to be warned of and need to protect themselves against, to realize, it's like we always say, consider the source. If your source for some negative view of someone else or something is somebody who is basically a slander by habit in particular, then you need to be careful that you're letting yourself being shaped by something that's not absolutely true. You know, that's one of the things that Solomon said, is a fool speaks before he hears the whole matter. And so as we learn in life, there's always two sides to every story. And sometimes I find that one side's right, the other side's wrong. More often than not, I find that both sides are wrong. And sometimes I'm on one of those sides and I'm wrong. I mean, it's just the way it is, because we respond to the world based upon our impressions, our perceptions, and we have our own subjective interpretation of everything that we experience. And unless we've taken the time to hear the whole story, unless we've taken the time to sit down and saying, okay, tell me what you see, hear, and think and feel about this, we're going to end up short-circuiting a holy process of spiritual growth and instruction in your life. And the problem is most of us don't have the courage to do that. When we are in a situation where something has offended us, we do not have the courage to sit down and say, can I be honest with you? That was really hurtful. That was damaging. That made me feel bad. Instead, what we do is we internalize it, and that's where it becomes internalized anger. Anger turns into rage or into malice, and then we begin to behave in a bad way. And slander is verbalizing that internal malice and that internal anger. So I think it's really important to understand that those things that are taking place on the inside of us matter, that just because we can keep other people from seeing them doesn't mean that they're not damaging us on the inside. I mean, when I found out, I was diagnosed many years ago with cancer, it was such a shocking thing because I didn't feel sick. I mean, I had some problems that I was dealing with and were affecting me, and I was being treated for and so forth. But I never imagined that it would be cancer because for some crazy reason, my mother had inculcated in my brain that if I ate lots of nuts, which I'm a nutaholic, if I ate a lot of nuts, that I would never get cancer. And it just wasn't in our genetic profile, even though both my parents died of liver cancer. And neither one were what I would call drinkers. I mean, they occasionally drank, but they didn't go there because of alcoholism. They went there because of probably a genetic predisposition or weakness. I often tell my wife, I said, I think I already know what'll take me out. And I'm probably wrong. I'll probably get run over by a dump truck. But nonetheless, we have to understand that what slander is a form of expressing that internal anger. It's a cancer that grows inside of us, and that's why the Bible says we need to ask God to free us from our anger, forgive us for our anger, and set us free, and help us to love those who we perceive as being against us, our enemies, and to pray that God would really put a love in our heart. It's one of the things I found has worked for me over the years is when. And, you understand that because you have somewhat of a public profile, a small fingerprint as mine might happen to be, that there are people who say some unkind things about you, and it's easy to get offended and hurt. And some people I've even had people who really, it was their mission to destroy me. And, which I should have been flattered that I mattered that much. But the point was that was their mission. And I found myself becoming so angry and resentful and so hurt by things that they would do and say. And as I would pray through it, God began to say, pray that not only would I forgive them, but I would bless them. Because if they're experiencing my blessing, they won't be saying these negative things. What they're expressing is really a disconnection they have with God, and pray that they could become so intimately connected with me that they would stop doing that and they would stop saying those things, and that love would permeate the heart. And it's interesting because over the years, and I've been at this a long time, been a Christian well over 50 years now, I found that when there's people who have taken that tack towards me, that many of them have gone through whatever they've gone through, they've grown through their season of life, and I've had many of them come back and just say, I just want to ask you to forgive me. I was in a bad place, and I realize it now, and I'm sorry. And it's like, and I thought many times I'm kind of shocked because it's so long in the past that I've forgotten about it. I can't even remember what they were angry about because I had so completely given it over to God and surrendered it to Him and not made it my issue anymore. And that's why I find that when you find yourself bringing up things from the past that people have said and done to you, then you need to really pray that God would give you a forgiving heart, because probably when you talk about that person, you do it in a pretty slanderous way. I love the fact that someone I know who went through a very terrible divorce, and the one spouse is still, years later, is still spewing vitriol, can't say a nice thing, very just caught up in anger, and I just see their life being destroyed because they're eaten alive by their anger. The other person gave their life to Christ, repented of their sins, and talking to them, they'll say, it was my fault as much as it was theirs. I was in sin. I did these things wrong. And this person is free. That person is free from the past. And God has done healing and remarkable things using them for His glory. And the other is just a sad, sad story. I pray that they are going to be saved, that they are saved, they're going to heaven. But boy, the years that have been wasted and the mental illness that's come as a consequence is quite tragic and painful. But that's why he also adds to this list, the fifth thing I think here is filthy language coming out of your lips. He's talking about really kind of a low-class, guttural, obscene speech. When I was growing up, my parents didn't use profanity in the home, and so I wasn't familiar with it. I rarely heard it. In fact, when I was growing up, it was kind of uncool for adults even to use profanity, and if they did it in front of women or children, I remember they used to always apologize profusely because they knew it was bad behavior. Now it's almost like it's become the primary language. I was taught that people use profanity because they have poor vocabulary and they don't know enough words to be able to say things in a meaningful and eloquent way. And so I've always been kind of obsessed with words and vocabulary. But I think it's even deeper than that. I think it comes out of an inner rage again that comes out of this person's heart, that there's such anger that is so unnatural to the human condition. I'm not saying it's not natural to our expression, but we're not created for that kind of effusion of evil, that we've been created with the gift of speech that we might honor God and praise his name, not to say horrible and ugly things about other people. And that's why it's something that he says is related to this idea of slander, that it just comes out of a very low place in our life, and it usually ends up expressing itself in filthy language, words that are not appropriate and not consistent with speaking and communicating truthfully and reverentially and respectfully. So, boy, these are going kind of fast. I maybe because I can relate to so many of these struggles. Anyway, I'll pick it up tomorrow. Sorry, our time's up. We got one more to go this week. Many blessings to you.